The year was 1885, and in the rugged foothills of the Colorado Rockies, where morning mist clung to pine forests like guarded secrets, Rebecca Stone woke each day with a quiet ache in her chest. It was the ache of wanting more in a place that offered very little. Her family's homestead sat on hard, rocky ground near the settlement of Pine Ridge, a place where hope survived only through stubborn will. From the outside, Rebecca's life looked simple, but inside her lived dreams too large for split rail fences and failing crops. At 23, Rebecca was thin and strong from years of work. Her faded brown dress hung loosely on her frame, patched at the elbows, worn thin from washing. Her dark auburn hair was always braided back with the same ribbon she had owned since girlhood. Her green eyes carried both exhaustion and quiet fire. She spent her days helping her father tend the land and her younger siblings, and her nights reading borrowed books by candlelight, imagining places where knowledge and effort could change a person's fate. Her father had once been a prospector full of hope, but the mountains had taken their toll. Years of breathing dust had ruined his lungs, and the small claim he worked barely kept creditors away. Winter loomed closer each day, and with it came hunger and the fear of losing everything. One cold evening, as the fire burned low, her father spoke the truth neither of them wanted to face. Rebecca would need to marry someone who could provide. The words settled heavy in the room, like snow on a weak roof. Rebecca did not argue, but she refused to surrender her future blindly. She would not trade one form of poverty for another. She wanted a life built on respect, not rescue. It was during this fragile time that the mountain man appeared. His name was Caleb Winters. He arrived one crisp September evening, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a worn leather jacket and boots scarred by honest work. His hands were rough, his face weathered, and his blue eyes calm in a way that felt steady rather than cold. He removed his hat when he spoke, his voice deep and respectful. He said he owned land in the high country and lived by his own labor. He did not promise riches. He promised effort, land, and a future built slowly. The settlement reacted with suspicion. A man who lived alone in the deep mountains raised questions. Women whispered that he wanted a free worker. Men muttered about strangers with hidden motives. But Rebecca saw something different. When they spoke on the porch in the evenings, under skies crowded with stars, Caleb surprised her. He spoke of books she had read. He understood railroads, progress, and the changes coming to the nation. He listened when she spoke, truly listened, as if her thoughts mattered. Still, the choice terrified her. Marrying Caleb meant leaving her family, her childhood home, and everything familiar. It meant trusting a man whose past he did not fully explain. The night before her decision, Rebecca sat alone in her small loft room, staring at her reflection in a cracked mirror. She saw fear there, but also resolve. Poverty would destroy her family. Staying would change nothing. Leaving might change everything. At dawn, with the mountains painted gold by sunrise, Rebecca stepped onto the porch. Caleb waited beside a wagon loaded with modest supplies. Her siblings watched silently from the doorway. Her father's eyes held both relief and grief. Rebecca took a breath and spoke clearly. She accepted. They left Pine Ridge as the town began weaving stories about her choice. The wagon climbed higher into the Rockies, following narrow trails cut through stone and forest. Rebecca braced herself for a hard life in an isolated cabin, endless winters and solitude. But as they climbed, something shifted. Caleb's confidence grew. The land opened into a hidden valley, green and alive even as autumn deepened. When they reached the ridge overlooking the valley, Rebecca's breath caught. Below them stood a massive log mansion, built with care and skill, surrounded by gardens, stables, and stone paths. It did not belong to a poor mountain man. It belonged to someone with power, resources, and intention. Rebecca turned to Caleb, her heart pounding. He looked forward, his jaw tight, as if he had been carrying this moment for a long time. He told her it was their home. And in that instant, Rebecca realized she had married a man whose life held far more secrets than she had ever imagined. The mountain had not brought her to a simple cabin. It had brought her to the edge of a truth that would change her life forever. Rebecca sat frozen in the wagon as it rolled down into the hidden valley. Her eyes stayed fixed on the massive log mansion rising from the green meadow below. It was not just large. It was carefully built, every beam placed with intention, every window catching the light like it belonged there. This was not a man's weekend shelter. This was power made from timber and stone. Caleb guided the horses in silence. His shoulders were tense, as if he expected her to run or shout. Rebecca finally found her voice, though it came out barely louder than the wind. She asked him what this place was, and why a simple mountain man owned such a home. Caleb stopped the wagon near the valley floor. He did not look at her right away. When he did, his eyes carried weight, not fear, but responsibility. He told her the truth slowly. His full name was Caleb Winters. His father had built one of the largest timber operations in the territory, not through reckless cutting, but through careful planning that kept the mountains alive. When his father died, Caleb inherited not just wealth, but control of the entire operation. Denver society had closed in immediately. Business partners, distant relatives, and powerful investors all wanted access to the forests and the fortune. Caleb had walked away. He chose the mountains to escape them. He dressed like a laborer, lived among workers, and learned which people could be trusted. He hid his name because he wanted a wife who loved the man, not the money. Rebecca listened without interrupting. Her heart raced, not with anger, but with shock. Everything she thought she understood had shifted. Before she could respond, a man stepped out from the mansion. He was well-dressed, clean, and moved with quiet authority. He greeted Caleb with relief and respect, calling him Mr. Winters. That single moment confirmed everything. Rebecca felt the ground move beneath her certainty. Inside the mansion, servants appeared. Tea was served in fine china, and warmth wrapped around her like a different world. Caleb apologized for the deception. He said he feared losing the chance to be known as himself. Rebecca believed him, but belief did not erase the confusion in her chest. She wondered what else he had hidden, and what price would come with this life. Before she could speak further, the heavy front doors opened. A woman entered with sharp steps and sharper eyes. She was dressed in expensive wool, her posture perfect, her presence commanding. She introduced herself as Catherine Winters, Caleb's aunt. Behind her came two men in city suits. They carried papers and the smell of control. Catherine looked at Rebecca the way one might look at an inconvenience. She wasted no time. She said Caleb's time hiding in the mountains was over. There were contracts to sign, land to sell, and alliances to restore. She spoke of Denver, of investors, of progress that meant stripping the mountains bare. Then she looked directly at Rebecca and questioned the marriage itself. She said such a union was unsuitable and likely temporary. Caleb stepped between them, his voice firm. He declared that Rebecca was his wife and that his decisions were final. Catherine smiled in a way that promised trouble, not surrender. She announced that society would judge Rebecca soon enough and left the mansion with her men, claiming this was far from over. That night, Rebecca lay awake in a bed softer than anything she had known. The mansion no longer felt magical. It felt like a test. She wondered if she had stepped into a cage made of wealth and expectation. The next morning confirmed her fears. Rebecca overheard Catherine speaking with Caleb behind closed doors. She heard words like unsuitable, ignorant, and replaceable. Catherine spoke of powerful women in Denver who would make better wives. Rebecca did not cry. She did not retreat. She remembered the years she had kept her family alive with careful planning and stubborn strength. She entered the room uninvited. She stood tall and introduced herself as Caleb's wife. Catherine offered her money to leave quietly. Rebecca refused. She said she had run households, managed debts, and negotiated with men far less polite than Catherine. She said she understood these mountains better than anyone in Denver ever would. Caleb backed her completely. He told his aunt that Rebecca would be part of every decision, or he would step away entirely. Catherine left furious but calculating. Before departing, she delivered a final challenge. There would be a governor's reception in Denver. Rebecca was expected to attend. Society would decide her worth. The days that followed became preparation. Caleb showed Rebecca documents, plans, and photographs. He revealed his role as an advisor to the territorial government on mountain development. Rebecca realized this was not just wealth, this was influence. She understood the stakes immediately. If she failed in Denver, they would destroy both the marriage and the work Caleb had built. A dress arrived from Denver, elegant but strong, designed to reflect both refinement and resilience. Rebecca practiced speaking calmly, confidently, without shrinking. She sent telegrams quietly, securing information and support. She prepared not to fit into society, but to challenge it. Denver overwhelmed her at first. The city buzzed with ambition. The hotel glittered with wealth. Women watched her closely. Men dismissed her politely. Catherine stood nearby, waiting for her failure. Rebecca refused to give it to them. At the reception, she spoke of land, workers, water, and responsibility. She asked questions no one expected her to know. Officials listened. The governor sought her opinion. Conversations shifted. Catherine lost control of the room. Then came the final attack. Catherine produced a judge and claimed the marriage was legally questionable. Papers were shown. Accusations were made. Rebecca did not panic. She asked to read the documents. She pointed out the legal flaws calmly. She revealed her newly confirmed appointment as a territorial advisor, secured through quiet work and real need. The room fell silent. Catherine had lost. The law stood with Rebecca. The marriage stood unchallenged. Caleb looked at his wife with awe. The mountain girl had outplayed Denver society. That night, standing on the balcony overlooking the city lights, Caleb thanked her. Rebecca told him she would never again allow others to decide her value. The mountains had taught her survival. Now she would teach society respect. But Rebecca knew something deeper. Winning once did not mean the fight was over. Power invited opposition. Wealth attracted enemies. And the world beyond the mountains would not stop testing her. As they prepared to return home, Rebecca understood that her journey had only begun. The mountains welcomed Rebecca back with early winter snow, soft at first, then steady, settling over the valley like a quiet promise. The lodge stood warm against the cold, its windows glowing in the long evenings. Yet life did not slow. After Denver, the world seemed to arrive at their door. Messengers rode in with letters from officials and business leaders. Timber crews waited for guidance. Families from nearby settlements came seeking help, advice, and work. Rebecca did not hide behind the walls of the mansion. She stepped into the work. Each morning she walked the grounds, speaking with foremen, listening to the wives of laborers, and learning the names of their children. She asked where boots wore out fastest, where water froze first, and which trails became dangerous in spring. She carried a small notebook and filled it with details others ignored. The workers noticed. Trust grew. Caleb watched her with quiet pride. He had built a system meant to last, but Rebecca gave it a heart. She proposed schools near the camp so children would not grow wild and uneducated. She pushed for a traveling doctor to visit the remote valleys. She insisted on safer housing and steady pay through winter months. Some investors protested at first. Profits would dip, they warned. Rebecca answered calmly that stability saved money over time. Fewer injuries, fewer conflicts, stronger loyalty. The results spoke louder than arguments. Productivity improved. Accidents declined. The mountains remained healthy. News traveled fast. Other operations asked to visit Winter's Lodge to see how it was done. Rebecca hosted them herself, not with luxury, but with honesty. She showed them the numbers, the land, and the people. Some laughed at first. Most left thoughtful. Catherine Winters did not return. Her letters stopped. Her allies in Denver shifted their tone from threats to requests. The board voted to support Caleb's approach, though some did so reluctantly. Rebecca understood power well enough to know that silence did not mean surrender, it meant waiting. Spring brought challenges. A mining company attempted to cut through a protected watershed nearby. They claimed legal rights granted years earlier. The move threatened streams that fed several valleys. Rebecca rode out to the site herself with local leaders. She listened to miners worried about losing wages and spoke to engineers focused only on speed. She proposed an alternate route, longer and harder but safer. The company refused. Rebecca sent telegrams. She gathered maps and testimony. She traveled to Denver again, not as a guest, but as an advisor. In meetings, she spoke plainly. She described floods that would follow careless blasting. She showed records of lost profits from similar mistakes elsewhere. The governor backed her. The route was changed. The watershed was saved. The miners kept their jobs. Word spread that crossing Rebecca Winters was unwise. Life at the lodge changed in quieter ways too. Rebecca became pregnant that summer. The news softened the valley. Women brought handmade blankets. Men repaired fences without being asked. When their daughter Emma was born during the first heavy snow of December, the entire community celebrated. The child's cry echoed through the great room, and for the first time, the mansion felt fully alive. Motherhood did not slow Rebecca. It sharpened her focus. She balanced meetings with feedings, letters with lullabies. She taught by example, showing young women that strength did not vanish with marriage or children. Girls from nearby settlements came to learn reading and numbers at the small school Rebecca helped establish. She told them they could choose their paths, even if the world tried to narrow them. 5 years passed. The valley grew into a true community. Gardens expanded. Roads improved. Trade increased without destroying the land. Rebecca's hair showed threads of silver, earned, not feared. Her eyes held calm confidence. Emma ran the halls with laughter, and her younger brother Thomas followed close behind, stubborn and curious. One autumn afternoon, Governor Pierce arrived unannounced with an unexpected guest. Susan B. Anthony had come west to speak with women shaping their territories without formal power. Rebecca welcomed her with tea by the fire. They spoke of responsibility, of voices ignored, and of slow change built by steady effort. Susan listened closely. She said women like Rebecca proved the future could be different. That evening, as snow began to fall again, Caleb and Rebecca sat together, watching their children play near the hearth. He asked if she ever regretted leaving Pine Ridge. Rebecca thought of the cabin, her books, and her father's tired smile. She said she missed the simplicity, but not the limits. She said the mountains had given her space to grow. The final test came quietly. Catherine returned with an offer wrapped in peace. She proposed selling part of the land for a fortune. The price was tempting. It would secure their children's future beyond question. Rebecca read the proposal carefully. She walked the land it described. She listened to the wind and watched the water flow. That night, she declined. She wrote that some wealth could not be replaced, that their children deserved mountains that still breathed, that the lodge was not a symbol of escape but of stewardship. Catherine never replied. The matter ended. Winter settled in fully. The lodge filled with light and voices during the holidays. Workers, families, and officials gathered together not as ranks, but as neighbors. Rebecca moved through the room with ease, her presence steady and warm. Late that night, after the last guest left and the children slept, Rebecca stood on the porch alone. Snow covered the valley, clean and quiet. She remembered the girl she had been, standing at the edge of Pine Ridge, with fear and hope tangled together. She smiled. She had accepted a humble mountain man as her husband. In doing so, she had found not just a mansion, but a purpose larger than herself. And the mountains, in return, had given her a place where strength and kindness could stand side by side, unbroken.